It is being bold. It is being brilliant. It's being non-apologetic about what we're doing.
You know, we had to leverage those abilities and just to come to the table and execute like never before.
Bring in capable people, coach them, make sure they're connected to the outcome, and let them run.
As a leader and with your team, have to have the will to win.
Connecting more with our humanity and, pausing for a moment to be the human beings that we are.
But with humility, you know that you can leverage that skill set that people have and let them be their best.
This will be a time of innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG live virtual briefing covering what matters most to drive a winning agenda and make the future a better place. A warm welcome to today's host, Lead Principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the 2020 Chicago CIO Virtual Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, Lead Principal of HMG, and my team and I are delighted to be here with you today. I think we have a world-class program, excited to share with you some brilliant thought leadership across industry of both CIOs, CISOs, and our partners. Reimagining the business and the future of work. Big thanks to our sponsors for today, Ariaka and CyberArk, as well supporting sponsors of Genesys Works and Sim Chicago, a 14-year relationship we've had. Great partnership over the years with the Chicago Sim chapter. Check them out. Sim is amazing. So we've been busy. Past 12, 13 weeks, we shifted digital and we focused on three things. One, a world-class research agenda, thought leadership research agenda that mattered. Two, customer engagement and delighting our customers. And three, our network. You, the participants here today on the HMG platform, thank you for being here today. So please check out some future conferences. We literally are doing a couple of week plus webinars and support the virtual HMG network. A big thanks for zooming in today. Let's get on with our program. First up, David Williams, President and CEO of Genesys Works. David, great to see you.
Nice to be here, Hunter.
You coming in from Houston?
No, actually from Phoenix.
Okay, great.
Where you and I last time we talked, it was on stage.
Good for you. Yeah. Hey, so what's new at Genesys Works? How have you guys pivoted in this digital world?
Yeah. So we, well, first of all, we work with low-income high school students to provide a pathway in careers in technology, and we identify them during their junior year. In fact, they'll be starting their summer training. They go through 8 weeks of summer training, both technical training and also professional skills training. So that's going to be starting here very soon, so that during their senior year in high school, they are able to take their classes in the morning and have their internships in the afternoon, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 20 hours a week for their entire year, which is unlike a lot of college internships right now are being canceled. But, a lot of times those are 4, 6, 8 weeks. And what we like to talk about is the fact that, after a couple months, these students really start adding value to the companies that they're interning with. And so to answer your question, we did have to pivot when the whole coronavirus happened. Fortunately, 80% of our interns remained in their internship, and they did it remotely, which I think is just amazing that these, and it's very, in some ways not surprised that these kids were able to pivot very quickly and continue to add value to the companies that they're with. But, we had 20% who lost their internships. And so, we actually have a bench right now of experienced young people who are, who are trained and have had great experiences in their internships. And now we have a new class that's coming up. And one of the things I would say is, especially given the panelists talked a little bit beforehand about, a lot of what's going on right now. A lot of these students are 95% of them are students of color, and they're amazing kids that just a lot of times don't have the same opportunities as others. And what I would say to anybody on this listening to this is that if you're looking for a way to be able to to make a difference in the lives of these kids, it is such a light touch or an easy thing to do from the standpoint that there's an ROI to your company. These students get stuff done, and they get it done at a modest cost to our intern companies, and it's a really good thing to do. Last thing I will say, companies that we work with, GE, TransUnion, West Monroe, Accenture. One of the individuals on the executive panel, hopefully coming up here, Dharti Tripathi, is on our board, and she's an executive with GE Healthcare. And then also in the chat room, if people just want to see a good story, Manny Robles is a student who went through our program a few years ago. He interned at AT&T and Chicago Public School Systems. He's now a cybersecurity analyst at hang on a second, at TransUnion. And not only did he go through it, but a couple of his brothers did as well. And so if you just want to be inspired during these times that are kind of challenging for all of us, go in your chat and watch that video.
David, thank you for all your service. You've had an amazing career in the nonprofit sector, a world-class individual, lifetime HMG award recipient. Appreciate all your invaluable effort and work. And we've had a long partnership with the Genesys Works going on 12 years. Looking forward to seeing you again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity, Hunter.
Great, thanks. Next up, Nir Gertner. Nir is the Chief Security Strategist at CyberArk. We like to really put a personal angle, a personal touch on every interview we do here at HMG. Nir was among the top 5-6 executives early on in the forming of CyberArk. Nir, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Hunter. It's good to be here.
Tell us an interesting story about those early days and the passion and the spirit that you had and how that same culture still carries through today.
Yeah, you know, like probably so many other startups, you know, we started just over 20 years ago in a basement in a pretty rough neighborhood in the suburbs of Tel Aviv, with a lot of big dreams. And, you know, fast forward 20 years, very quickly, we were a global company with 5,000 enterprise customers, 1,500 employees. Yeah, you know, technology changes, product change, but at the end of the day, it's really all about the people, the team, kind of that organizational DNA that you're trying to really conserve from being a very small team of a handful of people all the way up to 1,500 employees. And I think we're doing that by really taking called a consultative approach to what we're doing, having a healthy mix of being smart and bold, but humble about it, working with our customers. At the end of the day, we have a mutual goal here, which is to secure our customers, right? So yeah, it's a kind of an amazing 20-year long journey, but it's really the customers and the team that kind of keeps us going strong.
Hey, Nir, we've had a major shift in the whole enterprise architecture landscape in the past 3 months. What's new now for the role of CISO that wasn't there just 3 months ago?
Yeah, so I mean, I can look at probably a slightly broader scope and talk about some major trends that we're seeing, and obviously the last 3 months just exacerbate that. So three things come to mind. First, security is increasingly becomes a board level discussion, which is a very good thing. But it's taking some CISOs a little bit out of their comfort zone, really requires them to adapt to new or different type of discussion. So that's one change that is happening. A second major trend is the collapse of the perimeter, the shift from network-based security to an identity-centric security, and introduction of concepts such as zero trust. This specific trend was significantly accelerated, even forced upon us with the lockdown, with the stay-at-home orders. And last is, of course, you know, I cannot not talk about cloud and digital transformation. As organizations are shifting their focus to the cloud, there's a new type of security decisions to be made. There's a significant increase in the attack surface. And with that change, there is also more focus on applications, on application development. Suddenly the developer is a king, right? And again, these are areas that traditionally CISOs and security organizations weren't so comfortable with. So here, specifically, the CISOs need to stay relevant. They need to be effective. Many times they aren't even called to the party, and this is a major problem for them, and we need to adapt for that.
Nir, what kind of coaching would you give the CISO to get more presence with the C-suite and the board and the line of business, and to improve the relationship with the CIO?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, CISOs cannot be successful without the CIO, and I would argue that vice versa as well, right? Traditionally, there was the view that CIO addresses the business requirements, drives the business forward, and the CISO keeps it safe. Now, there's obviously an inherent tension in that approach. We'd like to move the business forward while keeping it safe, and many organizations are adopting this mindset. I think that the key discussion point that I see here is, I'll call it, who owns the risk? And I'll give an example which is a little bit artificial, but just to make a point. Let's assume a line of business rolls out a new application, and it's a huge success. Rather than having 1,000 hits a day, they have 1 million. Now everything crashes. And it's very clear that they failed the capacity planning, and it's very clear that the line of business owns it. But when the same application, when that comes to security, if the same application is breached, then there is kind of the notion that this is the quote unquote fault of the CISO. Now, can we really expect the CISO to own the risk while having potentially limited influence on the process, right? So I believe that the better approach that I'm seeing today is that the LOBs, the line of business, is the one that owns the application, also owns the risk. So they can make more rational decisions. Also requires the CISO to change their mindset and kind of present, I'll call it, a menu of options to the line of business. Hey, you can do X, like a minimum, nothing below the minimum, but you can do the minimum and have a residual risk. You can do more than that and have a different residual risk, lower residual risk. But at any rate, you are the one that owns the risk. The good thing about this approach is that the line of business can now balance the effort, the risk, the timing, and get to a better business decision, weighing security against all the other considerations. But that can only happen if they own the risk. So just finish by saying that in the DevOps world, we like to talk about shift left. So shifting decisions, specifically here about security, to the start of the process. And CISOs have to learn that language, the language that developers and DevOps use. They need to embed themselves into these processes. For instance, using security liaisons within the development teams and other things. They need to be part of that discussion.
So Nir, when you think about a CISO proactively being effective in that role, it takes a certain amount of energy and charisma to get into the business and into the front end of the development process, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are some CISOs that come from the development world, and that will be an easy transition. But nobody knows everything, so it's all about having the right team and again embedding yourself. But you cannot force yourself on the other side. This is where the line of business needs to understand, the developers need to understand that this is shared responsibility, and everyone has to be part of this game.
And it sure helps having some support from the risk committee and other C-level folks as you move and develop those relationships, right?
100%.
Let's switch gears and let's talk about privilege access security. Why is that important? Why does that matter in today's environment?
Right. So privilege access security has to do with protecting the pathways that hackers or malicious insiders take to breach an organization. There is a very typical attack chain that often starts with, some kind of phishing. Somebody will click on the wrong link. Somebody will open the wrong attachment. We know that we're working under an assumed breach mentality, right? But this just allows the hacker to obtain some kind of a beachhead in your network, but that's not really what they're after. In order to get to the interesting information in your databases or to your Windows domain controllers, or to your AWS or Azure console, the attacker needs to use or abuse privileged accounts. These are the accounts that are used by the IT teams, by the network admins, by the DBAs, cloud architects, DevOps teams, etc. in nearly 100% of attacks, if you look at the Verizon Business Report or some others, privileged access was abused for a successful breach. That's why when you look at analyst documents, at frameworks like the CIS Top 20, they put so much emphasis on the management of privileged accounts. It's something that can really fraud attacks. Now, in light of everything that we just discussed, the increased presence in the cloud expands the attack surface. If an attacker gets to your AWS console, think about it. The entire organization is there. In a click of a button, I can destroy your organization. I can copy all of your databases aside. This is something that was just not even possible in the old world of, let's call it an on-premise data center, right? As we have more applications, business relies on them. We have to think about the applications as well, right? They are also entities, privileged entities in our networks. We have to protect them. We have to protect the CI/CD pipelines. What happens if an attacker changes our code as it is being promoted to production? These are disasters, right? And maybe last, just to talk about the new normal, so to speak, where so many of us are working outside the organization's physical perimeter. Specifically, again, our admins, DBAs, developers, how do we secure their access? How do we apply concepts of zero trust and identity security to privileged accounts while they're working remotely?
And this is all right in the wheelhouse of CyberArk. This is exactly what you address, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So CyberArk, we really created that market of privileged access security. We're the first ones to start talking about it, to recognize the problem, to understand that this is really what hackers are doing today. And this is really why I believe that this is so effective, because we're really blocking an attack chain, a very privileged attack chain.
Hey, Nir, thank you so much for coming on the program, and thank you for CyberArk sponsoring today's summit. Really appreciate your engagement. Brilliant thought leadership. We'll see you again soon.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Take care now. Next up, Gunjan Bhow, Global CDO of Walgreens Boots Alliance. Gunjan, welcome.
Yeah, hi, Hunter. Thank you. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm guessing you're in San Francisco by the bridge.
That's right. Yeah, in the Bay Area. This is our, in these days, that's how we express ourselves, through wallpapers and
right. It's amazing virtual digital world. So Gunjan, you've been at this 20 plus years. You're a real IT pro. So a little context about Walgreens Boots Alliance, how big you are in North America, and your role as a CDO.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we are a global corporation, Walgreens Boots Alliance, and Walgreens, the U.S. Retail business is a biggest part of it. But overall, we have presence in 25 countries, 400,000+ team members, and we are a Dow Jones 30 component, 120 billion in sales. So a real global corporation, but centered around pharmacy, beauty, retail, as well as healthcare. That's sort of our footprint. In the U.S., we have 9,000 stores, and I'm sure a lot of your audiences are aware of Walgreens. We are, I think, within 5 miles of 60 to 70% of American adult population. So real footprint. And my role is essentially to do everything, run everything that's customer facing, that involves digital and technology in any shape or form. So everything from our mobile app, website, as well as the underlying customer IT stack, payments in the store, drive-through, anything that involves technology and digital. And as you can imagine, which is very topical for our conversation today, literally every customer journey in this pandemic has a digital component to it. Even the ones which were previously purely physical. So yeah, that's my charter, and basically, and I'm just from a career perspective, as much of a customer person as I am a technology person. And I always, that's how I've operated. It's really, putting the customer at the center and using technology and other operations to enable better experience.
Interesting. So what's changed post pandemic? What's new and different for you in your role?
It's fascinating. I think, so there are two big areas. One is on the how we work part, which I think is, really topical for this particular panel. And secondly, I think there is an aspect of how, the customer interactions and business is changing. So I think what's changed internally, though, is remarkable how quickly the decisions are being made, how plans which were being discussed and decided and debated on suddenly become mission critical and get executed within a matter of weeks, whereas they were sitting, being debated for months and months and months and quarter. So I think that's been very interesting in terms of the operating speed and the focus the pandemic has provided in terms of operation and decision making and giving teams a sense of mission and purpose. The second aspect that has changed is what I touched on earlier, is the digital part of the customer journey has become front and center and the primary one. I mean, I think a lot of retail businesses, especially legacy venerable businesses like ours, we are over 100-year-old company. Digital was a component or a percent or a small portion of the overall interaction and journey and orders and so forth. At best, it was a channel. I think now what has fundamentally changed is that digital is the primary, in many cases, the only way the customers interact. So I think we are then repurposing, like a lot of our retailers, this is how a lot of our businesses in our industry, we are basically recognizing that and reorienting our product focus, our technology, our organization, even to orient around the digital first.
I can't imagine how busy you've been over the past 13 weeks. What's the day look like? 18 hours?
Yeah, but surprisingly, I have to say, the productivity has. I'm really pleased with the overall amount of productivity and decision making, because you don't spend as much time in traveling. You don't, I think people there's an expectation of people are generally, if there's a purpose, we get together very quickly. Everyone's there, and so it's been. I think there are positives in this situation. Yeah, but the day is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yes.
The future of work, right? And we're in it right now. We're living in the future of work, right? So, have you noticed managing via a plate of glass, a screen of glass, managing via Teams or Zoom, that there's a whole another level of objectivity and effectiveness as you manage through performance issues and get to real critical facts around moving a project forward? Have you looked at that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Hunter. I think that is absolutely true. There is this whole area of how do workplace relationships develop, and in a case when you don't have face-to-face interaction, when you are hiring people entirely and onboarding them by video. And performance issues, like you said, real meaningful, difficult conversations. It's a lot of, I think, retraining and just adjustments we all have to make. And I think right now, what is happening, what I'm noticing is if the relationship already exists, that, you and I met somebody sometime before, and we worked on in the physical world before the pandemic, then we are able to work through this in the digital world. But I think we are now reaching a point, it's been 12 weeks, as you said, their new relationships are formed entirely digitally. And how does that work? No, I think it's a fascinating thing. It's almost going to be, I think, the norm for quite a while. I mean, I don't expect that as soon as we reopen, business travel is going to resume in the same, to the same degree of fervor that is it was before. So yeah, I think this whole issue of how do you effectively manage interpersonal relationships and conversations digitally is going to be a big issue.
So, they say never let a crisis go to waste. What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, that's true. And also we have, in our business, we have a lot of responsibility. I think because of the footprint, we are an essential retailer. So I think in a matter of weeks, my team, we generated this idea of drive-through. A lot of our locations have drive-through. So even in March and April, when things were really intense, we created a bag of essential items you could order online and pick it up using drive-through. We, I think a few weeks ago, announced testing for COVID in our stores and our parking lots, which again, due to our footprint, is a real meaningful value proposition for our. So, but ultimately, listen, we have constituents to take care of, which are our customers, our patients, because we are the largest pharmacy, so we have to make sure that our patients are able to get the medications that they need, which is what they come to us for. And we believe that we are a participant in the overall healthcare of the population at large. So this is, we have an obligation to not only keep running, keeping our employees safe, as well as our patients and customers safe, but while continuing to serve them. So yeah, we are doing, I'm really impressed with our team to how we've managed to handle everything so far, and looking forward to reopening.
Excellent. Gunjan, great interview. Stay with us and join the panel that's going to follow along here. Appreciate your coming on the show today.
Great. Thank you, Hunter.
Excellent. Next up, Dharti Tripathi, VP of Digital Operations at GE Healthcare. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Hunter. Great to be here.
So tell us, what's new for you? What trends are you seeing in the digital space at GE Healthcare post-COVID-19?
So I must say that, like everybody else, we don't have crystal ball, but given the feedback that we have received from our customers, our partners, and industry experts, as we go through this unprecedented time, we are observing some trends. One, foremost is the telehealth and telemedicine. I think that has become the new standard of care for us. We are definitely going to see increase in virtual application development. So allowing the access and interoperability from patient to clinicians, from clinicians to clinicians, and from clinicians to machine, and last machine to machine, right? So I think this is going to be a huge area of opportunity. Second, I think the need for service standardization across the continuum of care. This is one area that we are going to see a lot of new solutions coming out. Third, in telehealth, solutions around home diagnostics, remote monitoring, home care products. I think that there is going to be a huge development in these specific area. And then lastly, it's the demand for teleradiology, infrastructure and services. So these four, we do see a huge increase and potential opportunity in telehealth. As telehealth and telemedicine, becomes the new standard, we are gonna see rise in cybersecurity, some of the concerns, because a lot of these applications will be deployed on cloud. And I think earlier, in the interview, we heard a lot of new ways of operating to address some of these issues that we are gonna see. And we are definitely in GE Healthcare specifically putting a lot of focus as we move towards cloud. The third area is change in regulatory requirements. I think as we move towards telehealth and telemedicine, the reimbursements, data sharing, and the cross-state certification, we are going to definitely see some change. And some of the change we are going through right now, it will sustain, and some of the changes will even become more prominent and lenient from the policy perspective. So that's a big change in healthcare per se, but I think given what we are hearing, it's going to sustain and it's going to stick with us. The second to last that I feel like is the diagnostic testing in retail, right? So at retail space, somebody like CVS, and I think Gunjan, talked about some of the plans eventually. We are hearing from Walmart, not sure if Walgreens is going to penetrate in this space, but consumers' preference is going to change going to hospital versus, getting some preliminary tests done at these retail. So we are going to see some expansion in market in this area. And last, I think we are going to definitely see some boom in AI, so demand in AI and data interoperability, because there are specific use cases that we are going to see evolve in AI as it comes to determining the hotspots, contact tracing, consumer facing, and as we go towards social distancing, and in response to that, we're going to see new way of giving the visibility to individuals, whether people are following social distancing at parks, transportation, at retail shops, all those availability at the tip of consumers' hand. I think it's going to become more and more critical. So we are going to see a surge in some of the areas where the AI and the new applications will evolve. So yeah, these are the few trends that we are going to probably see, and it's going to stick around.
That was brilliant, Dharti. Thank you so much. Loved it. Please stay with us. We'll circle back to you here in just a minute. Next up, Allison Radecki, CIO of Beam Suntory. Allison, welcome. Great to see you.
Hello, Hunter. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for making the program. So a little bit about Beam Suntory and your role, size, and scale.
Very good. I am the global CIO at Beam Suntory. And for those of you who don't know Beam Suntory, we are known for our iconic brands such as Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, Cavassier, Lafroig. We are the world's largest producer of whiskeys, but we are also a world leader in all premium spirits across the globe. So we also have white spirits such as Hornitos Tequila, Sipsmith Gin, and Effen Vodka. We're about a $5 billion company, just short of that. As I said, we're global in over 80 to 100 markets. Most of our business is in kind of retail, but we do have about 20% of our business in bars and restaurants, which of course during this time has been pretty hard hit by the pandemic. But we are considered an essential business, so it's great to see our products still available online as well as available in retail stores as well. I've been at Beam Suntory now for about 6.5 years, and I have seen so much change at Beam. We are a very fast-moving company. We go through a lot of continual changes of our product portfolio as we continue to expand our global brands. We've had a lot of just overall industry growth, and we've been leading that growth, especially with our whiskey portfolio. But we've also been expanding our market presence and have launched at a greater scale in many emerging markets such as Brazil or India and China. But we continue to gain market share in our iconic markets such as the US and in Japan. Now, I've seen a lot of change since I've been at Beam, and in fact, just over 6 years that I've been here, I've had 7 different leaders or bosses, and so that is just an amount of change, personally, that I've had to go to adapt to different styles of leadership and to different strategic directions, just different communication means, and just different leadership styles. But I haven't seen, change at Beam with this pandemic and now the recession since we were acquired by the Japanese company Suntory back in 2014, which was very disruptive, for our company at the time as we moved from an independent public company as Jim Beam. We now are part of the greater Suntory family. But this recession has definitely, and the pandemic has definitely been a big crisis of how do we respond to that change and respond to the loss of business as bars and restaurants have been closing across the world. But I do believe this crisis has brought a pivot point for IT as well. Not only in terms of how we've been able to respond and lead through the shutdown and the work from home environment, but now as we look to reinvent the business, as we look to recover in different markets, and how do we reestablish kind of what we rebuild what we've done in the past, but also reinvent to the new sense of normal that we'll eventually see. So I do think that creating a pivot point from IT, and then just how I pivot as an IT leader from the style and approach and the collaboration that I have with my peers across the company, continuing to demonstrate that agility and responsiveness that we've always done from an IT perspective, but also being a little bit more direct and probably deliberate in my thought leadership as well as we move through some of the new decisions.
What does that look like, that leadership style, that pivot to be more courageous and more direct and more bold?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge right now. And as I'm working from home and connecting with my team and my peers across the organization in a different way, there's a couple things. There's first, from a near term, there is a lot of just reactions to the situation going on right now. We have a lot going on in the e-commerce space and in digital marketing space, and it almost feels like kind of whacking a mole, at some points, in terms of making sure that we have the right resources on the right thing. And so some of that pivoting of leadership is standing up and saying, how do we choose more planfully in terms of where we add our resources and where we don't, instead of just reacting? But then I think longer term, how do we instead, as an IT organization, just enable our strategic strategy? How do we participate in the development of the overall enterprise strategy, since technology has played such a pivotal role in just moving the situation of working from home?
Has your stock price or your credibility gone up since the crisis?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely think from an IT organization it has, and absolutely from a CIO perspective as well. I had the opportunity to present at our global town hall a couple months ago, and although I have presented in the last 5 years in that as well, I was one of the first leaders to stand up and talk about our response to COVID.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. Stay with us on the panel. We'll circle back to you here in just a minute. Okay. Next up, Rusty Patel, Senior Vice President and CIO of Tenneco. Rusty, good afternoon.
Hi, Hunter. How are you?
Excellent. Welcome to the program. Thanks for making it. So what's changed for you in the past 12, 13 weeks?
Well, similar to many here, a lot, right? So just to maybe give a little bit of context, I've been at Tenneco now for about 2.5 years, creeping up on 2.5 years. And just to give some more perspective, we're one of the world's largest, designers, manufacturers, makers of aftermarket and automotive components, specifically for ride performance, clean air, and powertrain. And we serve diversified markets, light vehicle, commercial truck, off-highway, industrial. In 2019, our revenues were about $17.5 billion, and we've got about 78,000 employees worldwide, and about 300 or so engineering, manufacturing, and distribution facilities. So about 9 months after I joined, we were deep into an acquisition. We acquired Federal Mogul from Icon Enterprises. And so the intention at that time was to acquire, integrate, and then stand up 2 independent companies. Drive, which is going to be an aftermarket and a ride performance company, and then New Tenneco, which is going to be a powertrain, technology company. And these were going to be 2 purpose-built, automotive suppliers that would best serve their markets and attract their investors, right? And one was going to double down on the combustion engine, and another one was going to eliminate its reliance on the combustion engine. So strangely, about 1.5 years later, we worked our way through, all that operational separation and synergy and, working capital challenges, and then unfortunately, some of our core businesses, they didn't perform well. Our end market shifted, financing markets kind of had a different view of what was needed, and then our pandemic struck. So I would say over the last 3 months, we've been laser focused on safety and visibility and optimization. And of course, just again for perspective, we've got about 30,000 knowledge workers and about 45,000 operators and technicians. But what's happened to us has had a profound effect on the strategy of our company. So what we were going to be 2 independent companies, we're going to be together longer now, at least probably through 2021. And so now we're operating as an enterprise. We're governing 4 different divisions with many different product lines, and each one's got its own strategies and markets, and starting points, and they're going to need to return something greater than their cost of capital. So this is a new normal for us, that's for sure. We too have had to embrace scale and speed of change and shifting mindsets and new cultures. We're trying to carve out investments for transformational capabilities while we fight for liquidity. And that's a very real deal for us, on a daily basis. But there's no question that this has uncovered, new opportunities for us in terms of process capabilities or new commercial opportunities, or frankly, numerous inefficiencies, that need to be addressed.
Rusty, my top innovative clients out of the Valley say, in order to get true innovation and real true change, you got to starve off or cut off resources. It almost is counterintuitive. It almost doesn't make sense. What's been your experience?
I agree with that. I learned a couple of jobs ago from one of my bosses that scarcity creates clarity, right? And, frankly, that's one of the things that we're trying to embrace right now, right? We're trying to employ value stream simplification. I'm sure many are familiar with it. It sounds simple, right? It's the notion that 80% of your value, comes from 20% of your resource. But now that we're running an enterprise with a portfolio of many different businesses, right, this poses a significant opportunity for us for product or SKU or business, simplification. And we're participating in that governance and decision making. And as you would expect, we're teeing up the BI and analytics to help make and execute, those kinds of decisions. There are other ideas or other things that we're working on. In our aftermarket businesses, we're using predictive analytics for the first time to help our customers, sense and respond to, these market opportunities, kind of how to navigate pandemic hotspots. We're working with our services organization to, tackle digital training and digital education. It might sound fairly benign, but in our world, with auto care being a critical service, it's a big deal for our service and repair customers. And so, not only does that help us facilitate communities and brand preference, for our products and services, but it helps identify needs for new products and new services. And it helps us, and obviously in some cases amplify, pay for service kind of a commercial need. In our OE world, I would say fairly traditional needs with product lifecycle management capabilities. 6 months ago, I would have said AR and VR was kind of nice to have. Ironically, our remote engineering folks are finding it essential, right, to be able to help support a product application and troubleshoot with technicians who happen to be in the work, in a work site with the engineers, working from home. Our IT group is also supporting, of course, more maybe traditional things like digital factory and, manufacturing execution systems. Historically, Tenneco has been a hard part maker, but we're excited to launch a new segment around intelligent suspension and intelligent offerings, and our function is playing a vital role in helping, the create and the management of that software as an ecosystem to integrated solutions, in vehicles. So I wish I could share, and if our CEO is here, he was probably one of the biggest skeptics, of the effectiveness of working from home. And if you were to ask him today, I think he's a believer.
Awesome.
So we've we've come a long way as maybe a rather, unfortunately, super traditional, automotive company. But I think as some of the other stakeholders shared, we're beginning to do a better job of embracing the imperfect and, kind of understanding the need for speed. So, and there's no question for us, we benefited greatly from the investment that was driven as a result of the transaction. Had that not happened, it would have been a very different story. But the exciting part for us is, all that mindset and the capability is now being applied to the crisis, and I'm sure is going to have a sustained impact for us as we move forward.
Rusty, great presentation, great thought leadership. Thank you for making the program today. Stay for the panel. I'll circle back to you. Next up, Ed Wagner. Ed's the Executive Director and Global CIO of JLL. Ed, great to see you. A little bit about JLL. Some folks may not know what JLL is.
Hi, Hunter. Thanks for having me on the panel. JLL is an $18 billion global real estate company. Many people haven't heard of us, but you're probably in one of our buildings, or you can see one of our buildings, or for a large part of the Fortune 500, we actually manage your real estate portfolios. So that's what JLL does. I loved the word pivot that Allison used earlier, because when all of you left the office to go home virtually overnight, you pivoted our business model immediately. You left our buildings. We've gone from people telling us to maximize the number of occupants in the office space to now people are saying, let's minimize the number of people. Let's increase social distancing. That business model pivoted almost overnight. In addition to running real estate, we also have a number of our clients that have outsourced their real estate technology platforms to us. And we're seeing some almost overnight changes in the demands that people have from technology and how they operate in their real estate. So dramatic pivots. And I think another term Allison used was the near term. There's going to be many near terms and many near normals that are really impacting both our business, but also our clients' businesses.
Hey, Ed, how do you think the nature of work will change going forward?
I think it'll be pretty, it's going to change. We just did a survey. We've not released it publicly yet, but we've got the results back. It's with employees around the world. And one of the findings is that the future of work will be a hybrid model. We're going to have flexibility. People are enjoying working from home, but they do want to go back to the office. So I think we're going to see that none of us are going to have the office work that we had before, but it's going to be a mix. We're also seeing a big change in the way employees want to interact with our occupancy. So if you think about, we can all do things on our mobile devices at home. We're starting to see with people that are returning to work, they want to know more about the space they're in. They want to be able to reserve a desk. They want to know that it was disinfected the night before. They want to ensure proper social distancing. So I think especially in the near term, that's going to be a big part of how our work is going to change. And it'll probably be there, especially with the flexible space and social distancing for quite some time to come.
Talk to us a little bit about employee experience applications.
Great question. And that goes with my comment about people wanting to interface more with their workplace. If you think about your experience in your 5 to 9, many of us can use our mobile devices. We get an Uber, or we did before the pandemic hit. We're having groceries delivered through perhaps Instacart. A lot of us are relying on Amazon. If you have a smart home, you're interfacing. You're doing a lot on your mobile device. But when you go into the office, a lot of that capability ends. You can't interface with the building for many people to book a conference room, or to ask for facility services, or to check the air quality. Let's talk about social distancing to see where different people are going to be. And so one of the big items that we're seeing, especially with the smart buildings that were coming up before the pandemic hit, we're starting to see a lot of companies and the employees say, I want to interact with the building more. I want to be able to have quick communications. I want to be able to report issues that are going on and get a real-time response. And so those experiences of being in the workplace moved from a nice to have leading, if you will, before the pandemic, to now it's a point of entry for a lot of corporations that are looking to bring their people back into healthy workplaces and have them focus on work versus being afraid.
Interesting times. What did you learn? What's the big lesson or the big aha in the past 12 weeks?
Biggest aha probably came out of the research that we just had come out of the employees. And I was actually shocked at the number of people that said they wanted to go back to the office because they missed the interaction with people. And that was the US and Europe led Asia. Asia said they wanted to go back because they found a more professional environment at the office than what they had at home. But in addition to that, it was almost overwhelming, the US response about, I don't miss the commute. I do like the flexibility of working at home. And that's what leads us to believe that there'll be a bit of this hybrid model going forward. One of our other panelists also mentioned the surprise at how productive people were at home. And a number of our clients that we've talked to that did not have work at home policies before are actually finding that some of their groups are actually increasing their productivity where they can measure it from a quantitative perspective. And so that's causing people to rethink now, you know, how do we incorporate some of those capabilities into our go forward methodology to maintain that productivity?
Ed, thanks for coming on the program. I'm going to invite Gunjan back, as well as the rest of the panelists to come back to the program. Gunjan, thoughts on what does the future look like? Okay, let's go out 6, 18, 36 months. Let's just talk about the future. What do you think we should be looking for? Or, give us a futuristic look on the business landscape from your point of view.
I think I expect that within a year we'll reach a point where a lot of roles in our organizations are going to be primarily work at home. I think so. And what I mean by roles, not necessarily people will actually be doing it, but I think the organizations will adjust to the idea that certain roles will, I think new openings will be created with really no physical location in mind in a lot of workplaces. And so I think that's going to be a fundamental change. I mean, it's been a trend that's been in place for a while. I mean, we already knew of companies even before the pandemic that something like, at least here in Silicon Valley, on an average day, between 20 and 30% of the seats in a building were unoccupied due to people working from home or traveling or vacation or whatever. And space planning, I'm sure Ed at JLL knows this better than I do, was already adjusted to that. I think now we're going to reach a stage where literally new openings will be created with no physical location. So, you will see job postings without a location, without a city next to it. And right. I think that's really going to, and then all that implies, which is how do you develop relationships? How do you onboard somebody? How do you ensure that they have the right tools and ability to communicate and so forth? And especially when you take this internationally, that's going to become even bigger of an issue, right? I have a significant amount of portion of my team in Asia. I'm sure a lot of these panelists do as well, which we have a unique set of challenges related to bandwidth and virtual desktops and so forth. So I think you're going to see all of those amplified, but the most important thing will be the bit will be flipped to primary versus secondary remote working.
Good, John. Thank you very much. We have a couple minutes left. Final thoughts, Dharti, your thoughts on the future, lessons learned, your leadership style, please.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Gunjan and Ed in terms of in this new area, we are definitely going to have a hybrid model. So we at GE, we conducted similar survey to kind of determine which are some of the critical, essential teams that need to be on site versus what are some of the roles that can work from home, and also the needs and also desire from the people. And we are hearing the same, that it's going to be hybrid, given the interest that people are definitely seeing better productivity, work-life balance as they're working from home. And we also did some analysis internally in terms of, how we are seeing this spanning out across the organization. And I think we are leaning more towards the hybrid, but it's going to evolve and things will change as we learn. In terms of lessons learned, I think there are a lot of things from leadership perspective. I would say that the two takeaways is, one is empathy, that everybody is going through in this unprecedented time, a lot of different circumstances, individual situations. So leading with empathy, building that trust. And we are actually going towards a contactless world, but leadership is going to be one area that it will require more contact as individuals are going through different circumstances. So I think more communication, direct contact with the teams, and building that trust and connecting with the actual vision and strategy where they understand how they are driving the value. It's become more important than ever before. So those are the few takeaways I would say from leadership and learning experience. But I fully agree that world is evolving. Another future change I see is the digital innovation in every industry. So I, of course, have been in healthcare from last year and a half, but I had the opportunity to work in 7 different industries in technology and in business. And I see the way we are evolving and moving towards virtual world, the new business models are coming out across all these different industries. So nothing but more digital way of operating I see in the future.
Thank you. Very, very well said. Appreciate your coming on the program today. Allison, final comment?
Well, I do think that as a leader, and we've been doing a lot of video conferences across Beam Suntory, it's our standard way of meeting now is through video. We've been inviting each other every day into each other's homes. And I think the things that we've learned about our staff while they've had children playing in the background or cats crawling across their keyboards or, whatever other activities are going in their home has made me connect with my staff in a whole different way than I've ever connected with them before. And I've learned more about them as individuals and people than I've known, for the 6 years I've working for them. And so that to me has been a huge learning about how do I connect with my staff differently and how do I keep that connection, going once we do transition back to an in-office environment.
I love that. Great final thought. Thank you, Allison. Thanks for coming on the program today. Hopefully you can stay with us through the end of it. Rusty, final comment?
I echo the panelists' comments here. I mean, it's going to be a hybrid world. I think trust and empathy mean everything, right? In order for us to have confidence that we can make choices together and live with the consequences. For me, in this particular industry, kind of now that I'm back in automotive, I would say that, speed and focus. Historically, I see a lot of propensity to plan and, understand all the risks and kind of make progress. But if we can get a majority of the enterprise focused on a few things, right, and have tolerance for, trying and learning as we go, that kind of organizational agility, right, that you've talked about quite a bit in many other places, we can do some amazing things, right, that haven't been done at least to this point. So.
Perfect. Love it. Great. Thank you for coming on the program, Rusty. Hopefully you can stay with us as well. Ed, one final comment?
Yeah, actually, 2 quick comments. I loved what Dharti said about communication, but I think communicating not just with our teams, but with each other, sharing with each other what we're thinking, asking questions. I think we need to do more of that, especially in the days ahead. And then I loved what Allison said about the empathy for people. At the end of the day, the people matter. Without the people, we don't have our businesses, we don't have our teams. So I've seen people in a way that I've never seen them before. I know more about them. It's a wonderful thing, and keeping that going as we go forward and remembering a lot of our people are coming back afraid, we can help transform that fear to trust that we'll do the right thing, that we'll have safe workplaces.
Thank you, Ed. I want to tell you, panelists, thank you very much. This was the best panel of the year so far, by far. You guys nailed it. Awesome job, everyone. Yes, Allison. And by the way, we think about it at HMG is trust and hope and love as the final kind of healing element. I think we all need a lot more empathy to pull this world back together. So again, thank you very much. Hopefully you can stay to the end of the program. Can I bring the search executives out to the show? Welcome, Tony, Mark, and Beverly. Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Great to see you all. It's the new mode, the new medium, right? So Beverly, why don't you kick it off for us? We've known each other, I think, for over 20 plus years, collaborated seamlessly for 20 years. How are you today?
Great, I'm doing fine, thank you. For those out there that don't know me, I run an executive search business out of Westport, Connecticut. We have a national practice, and we primarily recruit CIOs, chief digital officers, chief information security officers, heads of data science, and the whole direct report level. I also have quite an active executive coaching practice, helping people with their career ascent, and those that are between jobs, helping them with marketing plans to penetrate the market. So happy to be here and happy to be part of the panel, Hunter.
Great to see you. Thanks for being here, Bev. Hey, Mark, you're up next. Before the COVID the crisis, we talked about the disruptive leader. Now we certainly got disruption. What are we talking about next?
Well, the disruptive leader is still going to be around and with us for quite some time. The disruptive leader, for those who have not been familiar with the phrase, Hunter refers to a way of thinking about one's own ability to be agile, one's own ability to pivot. And just as we're pivoting business plans and ways of working and ways of staying in contact and ways of communicating, the reflection internally to, am I open? Am I receptive to other ideas? Do I think outside the box? Am I courageous, which means do I go past my comfort zone? That's my definition of courage. Are we being creative and resourceful? And all that goes into what we're just bunching together as a group of competencies that make up the self-disruptive leader. So if we can disrupt companies and business models and industries and whole countries, we need to disrupt ourselves.
Thanks, Mark. And sorry for the introduction. Mark's the senior client partner at Korn Ferry. We've been, I think, collaborating for over 20 years as well. A little bit about lifelong learning, Mark. Let's go with that for a minute.
Yeah, all of our research says that, and it may very well just be an extension of the self-disruptive leader, is that learning agility can be the #1 determining factor, I should say, in lifelong career success. And I preach self-improvement, lifelong learning, whether it's taking a non-credit course at a local college or reading books or attending these kinds of events, having a mentor for sure. And there's some other things as well, but being open to learning and open to change, they kind of go together.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Next up, Tony Leng from Diversified Search. Tony, we've been collaborating almost to the day, 13 years and 3 months.
Quite correct, Hunter. Great to see you, and thank you for what you're doing. I think it's important that people do not drift and become unconnected, and I thank you for what you've done to keep this community together.
It's exciting. It's an exciting time. I think it's unprecedented, no doubt, what we're all going through over the most recent events over the weekend. Give us a ray of hope about the future for technology, the future for the tech exec in the C-suite, the boardroom, and the line of business. Tony?
There's 3 big things, and I think that the leaders who just spoke, Dharti, Gunjan, Allison, Ed, and Rusty, kind of covered these issues. I want to put them in 3 buckets. The first one is the tech transformation, and everyone's seen digital speed up. And the CIO is either a hero or a villain, depending on how you positioned yourself and what you've been able to accomplish. And we can unpack that more later. The next is the corporate strategy, you know, the business model change, how the roadmap is changing, and the fact that the technology leaders are now key, you know, thought partners, enablers, key influencers in the whole corporate strategic initiative. Boy, you're right front and center now. And the third piece is kind of thinking about the leadership and what's the people roadmap look like. And we've heard a lot of people speaking about leadership. And boy, people have had to do some hard things during this time. But there's also people have had to do soft things. And there's a concept that I have called adaptive resilience, which we can unpack a little bit if you'd like.
What is adaptive resilience?
So to my mind, imagine a fire or a flame. You know, if you were not resilient and this whole COVID thing hit, you kind of got blown out. Or however, if you were too resilient and you stood so firmly that the big gust of wind that hit you didn't help you to flex, change, and adapt, you were probably overly resilient. It's like putting a dome over a flame. Nothing happens. But adaptive resilience means as the things changed, as the winds came up, you as a flame, you flared up, you went to places where you needed, you changed, you were empathetic, you understood your people in new and different ways, while at the same time doing some of those tough things that leaders had to do. Two big traits for me on adaptive resilience, or what I call strategic patience. You plant, you water, but you've got to wait for growth. And I'll talk about the search industry because there's a particular thing around that. And the other one really is kind of this openness, vulnerability, you know, knowing nobody knows the answer. This is new. This never happened before. So how do you say, help me? Because there are people in your business, people you can listen to and talk to help you. You don't have to know all the answers. You have to be open, vulnerable, and accepting, and humble.
Thank you very much, Tony. Great insights. Bev, thoughts on what you're hearing from your clients?
Well, it's a mixture of things, right? I have clients that are doing well, that are in healthcare. I have some clients in higher education that are, you know, really worried about the financial picture going forward. I have, you know, just about everything in between. So, but I think the hope and the optimism, because I think people really need to hear this, is that we will survive. We are surviving. There will be some organizations, you know, JCPenney's and Pier 1 are shuttering stores and may or may not make it. But there will be others that, you know, will pivot, will reinvent themselves. And I think the CIOs are in a great position to help the leadership team. You know, I'm thinking for all of these years, we've been building, you know, databases. We've been, you know, building business intelligence systems. This is the time for the CIO to get into that data, you know, maybe not, you know, maybe with your marketing pal, and figure out what are some really amazing insights. You know, you can't necessarily go visit your customer in person. So why not take this opportunity to look for some amazingly interesting information that would enable you to contribute to your executive team's thinking about the future. I mean, think about the innovation around, you know, Hilton, Mayo Clinic, and Lysol. What an amalgamation of three giants that will enable the hotel and restaurant industry to achieve new standards. And frankly, if I'm going to travel somewhere in the next year, I'll probably go to a Hilton hotel because of that, you know, linkage with the Mayo Clinic. My God. So it's an opportunity for the CIO to think out of the box, partner with other executives, and help your company achieve some breakthrough thinking and maybe help your company survive. It's time for you know, shaking up the routine, because we've been shaken.
We've been talking about it for 3 or 4 years now, the customer journey, and I think Gunjan did a great job of highlighting it earlier, and the other panelists. Mark, what is it about this crisis, this pandemic, that really all of a sudden puts the CIO in the best seat in the C-suite, and potentially the opportunity to drive innovation and reimagining business models?
Yeah, I'm going to answer your question directly in a second, but I want to build on something that the others have said, and especially Bev, in using the word optimism. It's clear that our business has been impacted just like everyone else's in the business services domain, because our clients are distracted. They're involved in survival, in liquidity, in managing resources and dealing with people. And so they've turned their face away from search temporarily for a few months, but it's already coming back. And the good news, the silver lining is, if you're approached by a recruiter or one of my frenemies today, you know that it's a good company. You know that it's a thriving company, a company that probably has already figured out how they're going to power their way through the rest of the curve and come out better on the other end. So the optimism is with what's being done now and what will be done, because in every downturn, to your point, Hunter, in every downturn, there's a slowdown and an explosion afterwards, whether it was the 87 ERP gold rush or 2001 and WW2 and 2009 into the cloud. There will be an explosion, perhaps late this year, perhaps early next year, and we just need to be at the right place at the right time, vis-a-vis technology, which of course is collaborative tools and a lot of data and a lot of automation. And today is that opportunity, Hunter, to answer your question, for the CIOs to really push forward to the front of the line and really push forward into the boardroom and say, I have ideas that can help us not only survive, but thrive. And what are those ideas? Be prepared and come armed with stuff that's going to make your employer more successful, and you're a hero.
Love it. Thanks, Mark. Great, brilliant insights. Tony, leaning in and leading in a crisis. You know, how do you get into that zone? How do you know you're in the zone and you're leading effectively in a crisis?
So, Hunter, you know, I think that leadership is all about followers. And I think now's the time for leaders to actually show that they can get the best out of everybody else, being vulnerable and open, and also understanding what your culture is. If you're in a business, everybody's known digital is changing the world. And if you're in a business that's slow to adapt, what is it telling you about your culture? How are you dealing with what's happening at the moment? If you're in a business that is powering forward, as you say, and as Mark just said, it's going to be recruiting the right talent because they realize there are masses of opportunities. They are rethinking their business model. They're doing all of this. Boy, you're in a fantastic position right now. If not, then you're like, how much are you to blame as a leader? Look to yourself. Were you part of a culture that didn't embrace this change? Or were you the voice fighting for this? And if you are and were the voice fighting for it, perhaps now is your time and you will be in the front seat. Boy, and you better start driving hard to help your business change, because this is a time that I think innovation, change, embracing digital, all of these things, everyone's been hearing about for years. Now's your time. And that's what I think the great hope and the great blessing is for the future, that if you're the right tech leader, this is the time for you to shine.
Well, clearly innovation has to happen, right, Mark?
Absolutely. Innovation is now, to the point about CIO heroes, there's so many tools, hardware tools, software tools, application tools, and the innovation is using them brilliantly in the context of your company's situation and where you can get the ROI and where you can help the company succeed. and use all these wonderful tools, pick and choose and put them together in architectures that will make a difference. And so innovation is the way to go.
Thank you. Bev, final comment?
I think I'd like to say that this is a time when CIOs would benefit greatly by making sure that they have the right leadership toolkit and they are able to use it, that their direct reports as well have the right training, have the right perspective on leadership. There's some downtime to be able to take some courses. I think also this is a time for embracing innovation in your culture. You know, we're not together live anymore. So with a hybrid plan going forward, you have to replace that water cooler conversation, the informal conversations. How do you do that? How do you onboard new people so they get excited about working for your company? You need to partner, I think, with your head of HR and come up with some new cultural norms, new behaviors. A lot of it's going to be over, you know, the Zoom or whatever, but it's going to be imperative that you create a winning culture that looks a little different than the way it looks now.
Couldn't agree with you more. Bev, thanks so much for coming on the program. Great job. Tony, final comment. We got to move on.
Mark and Bev, I agree exactly what they just said. My final comment is about societal need. You know, you're looking in your business, you're looking at your people, but you need to look broader in society. COVID-19, George Franklin, there are people in your organizations, people within your communities and your societies that I think we as leaders need to be heard, need to make statements about. Thank you, David Williams, for what you're doing in your elements of society. And I would challenge everybody to think big about we're at a pivotal point in our overall society as well.
Yes, totally agree, Tony. Awesome job. Rockstar panel. John Phillips from Chicago just said, rockstar panel. I agree with him 100%. Great job, guys. Stay with us. Can all the panelists that are still on the show turn your cameras on? It'd be great to see everyone. Thank everyone. Mark, Bev, Tony, Rusty, if you're still here. Allison, great job. Ed, thank you. Nir, awesome. Really appreciate it. A big thanks to the Chicago Sim chapter. I'm a proud member of some 20 years. And a great partnership that we've had for 14 years with Mark Griesbaum, Scott Berkey, Susan Malish, Wayne, and others. Thank you so much for sponsoring this and being a partner. Genesys Works, Ariaka, and CyberArk. Great job. Nir, good job.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Stay in touch. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.